Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babins, and in this episode, we are talking about reverse engineering a $100,000 a year magic business. Now, two things some of you may not know about me. The first is that before I was a full-time magician, I got my undergraduate degree in pure math. Now, that has basically never been helpful in my life. I've never had a real math job. However, it has given me that mathy brain that allows me to reverse engineer things and better understand the numbers behind things like business, ad cost, quantities, and things like that. The second thing that you may not know about me is that I run a six-figure magic mastermind, helping magicians cross the 100, 200, and 300K mark in their magic business. Now, I bring this up not to impress you, but to impress upon you that those two things come together perfectly to form this episode. What is the math behind a $100,000 a year magic business? And we're going to talk about two different things, both based on conversations. One that I had with somebody just recently in their strategy session, which is a call that I do with magicians to help them grow their business and potentially, if it's a right fit, start working with us in the six-figure mastermind. And the second is a conversation that I had with a member of the six-figure mastermind to help him grow his magic business. So, starting with the first part of the math behind the magic business, which is price. I was having a conversation on a strategy session with a magician earlier this week. And on that conversation, I was asking him how much he charged. And he said about $350. Now, what I had to break down for him is if you charge $350, it's very, very difficult for you to make $100,000 a year in the magic business. If you charge $350, then it takes 285 bookings to get to $100,000. And that simply is not possible. There's 365 days in a year. So that's most days of the year that you have to do a show, and there probably are not that many shows available. So I want to do three things right now. Number one, I want to walk you through the math between some common prices that you may charge in your magic business to reverse engineer what it would take at that price to hit $100,000 a year. The two other things I want to do is A, help you better understand what you can't be charging, and B, help you better understand if you're in the right market, if you're working in the right niche at the rate that you are currently charging. So let's do some math. If you are charging $250 per gig, then you need 400 shows a year. If you're charging $500 a gig, then you need 200 shows a year. $500 times 200 gigs is 100,000. If you charge $2,500 a gig, then you need 40 gigs a year. And if you charge $5,000 a gig, then you need 20 gigs per year. Now, I know you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, Jonah, obviously, if I charge $50,000, then I only need 2 gigs a year. That's not the point. The point of this is two things. Number one, what you can't be charging, and number two, the quantity of gigs that you may be able to do. Let's start with what you can't be charging. Many magicians that I start working with are charging like $250 or $400 per booking. And the problem with charging $250 per booking is you need to do 400 shows a year, and there are only 365 days in a year, so it makes it very difficult. If you know a magician in your city who's charging $250 per show, I'm willing to bet that this is his part-time thing, that he also has another job. Why do I know that? Well, because it's really hard to do 400 shows a year, and he's probably only making $20 or $30 or $40,000 a year in the magic business because he's charging $250 and there's just not 400 gigs a year. So look at what you're currently charging right now and do the math, and you may see that the number that you're charging does not align with the goal that you're aiming at. Now, I don't know what revenue goal you're aiming at, but if we reverse engineer $100,000 a year, then you can see that $250 is probably too cheap because it's hard to do 400 gigs a year. $500 is a little bit closer. That's 200 gigs a year. It's hard in certain markets like corporate markets and things like that. But if you do children's birthday party shows, there's plenty of kids' birthday party magicians that do 4 shows a weekend, 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday, and that's 200 shows a year. But if you are doing corporate events, company parties, then it's very difficult for you to have a $100,000 a year business charging $500 because there's probably not 200 corporate gigs for you per year in your city. So I recommend, if you're doing corporate events or certain other markets I'm going to talk about shortly, you probably want to start around the $750 or $1,000 range so that you can get closer to numbers that actually make sense. Now, let's talk about the quantity. We already talked about the dollars, but talking about the quantity, you may realize that the vehicle, the market that your magic business is currently in does not match the quantity of gigs that are available. Here's what I mean. If you're charging $500 and doing kids' birthday parties, that's fine because there's hundreds and hundreds of kids' birthday parties in your city that are looking for a magician. That can work. Obviously, you need the right lead acquisition, the right quantity of leads, but technically speaking, that could work. You could do 4 kids shows every weekend and hit $100,000 a year. But if you're doing corporate holiday parties and you're charging $500, there's probably not 200 corporate holiday parties that you can do. Most of them happen in December. There's only 30 days in December. So you need to look at the vehicle, the market that you're in, and make sure that it matches up, that the quantities, and make sure that it matches up with the quantities that relate to what you're charging. For example, there are magic motivational speakers that charge 10 to 20K per speaking engagement. There are corporate magicians that charge $2,500 per gig. There are more corporate magic shows than there are magic speaking opportunities. So those make sense. But if you want to be a motivational magician speaker and charge $1,000, you probably are not going to find 100 opportunities per year to do your magic motivational speaking. So the second aspect of the math behind the price of $100,000 a year is not just making sure that the quantity makes sense for the dollars that you're charging, but making sure that the dollars make sense for the quantity that you're able to get. So I hope the math part of price makes sense to you, and whether the aha for you is that you need to be charging more, or the aha for you is that you need to add or change the market that you're performing in, this should help you better understand what you're aiming for and how to reverse engineer a $100,000 a year magic business. The second math thing that I want to talk about is the math behind lead acquisition. This came from a conversation that I had with a member of the mastermind who's doing about $65,000 a year in his magic business from Google Ads. Now, I've taken his numbers and I've just rounded them out so that we can have some not average looking numbers, some easy to understand numbers so that you can see what this means. So he currently runs Google Ads. When he runs Google Ads, on average, from hundreds of form fills, he knows that it costs him $100 to Google per form fill, per person that fills out the form on his website for an event. We also know that when he gets on the sales call with the client, he has a 50% close rate. So half of the gigs book and half of the gigs don't book. So if you're following so far, it costs him $100 per form fill, and 1 in every 2 form fills turns into a booking. How much does he charge per booking? Well, he charges $1,500 on average per gig. We're almost at the reverse engineering part. And how many $1,500 gigs is $100,000 a year? Well, it's 66. 66 times 1,500 is 100,000. So let's start looking at the math. If we know that 66 gigs is what it takes, and we know that he closes 1 in every 2 form fills on his website, then he doesn't need 66 form fills on his website. He needs 132. That's 2 times 66, assuming that every other one closes. 132 form fills on his website. We know, roughly speaking, it costs $100 per form fill. So 100 times 132 is 13,200. That is how much he needs to spend per year on Google Ads. Roughly speaking, that number comes out to about $1,100 per month. Now, I don't know what that makes you feel. Maybe you feel, oh my gosh, that number's high. Or you feel, oh my gosh, that number's low. Or you feel, I didn't know how much Google Ads cost. I don't care what you feel. What I wanted to express to you is that you can reverse engineer how much you need to spend based on how much it's costing you right now. And we had that conversation. He immediately doubled his ads, and the next day he immediately got an extra form filled. That doesn't mean that everything's going to magically work, but it does mean that we're on the right track. If you spend double on your lead acquisition, then you will get double, most likely, which means you will generate double. So all we did here is we reverse engineered how many more gigs it would take to get to $100,000 a year, the cost per gig in terms of Google ads, and that actually indicated how much he needs to spend on his Google ads. I'm going to give you another example with cold email. We have members in the mastermind that are crushing it using cold email outreach, and I'm going to give you some average numbers for cold email, and we're going to reverse engineer them so you can understand how you can do this in your business. For example, let's say you send 500 cold emails, and every time you send 500 cold emails, you book a gig. Obviously, it's on average, but roughly speaking, every time you send 500 emails, you book a gig. Your average gig is $2,000. So if you want to make $100,000 a year in the magic business and you charge $2,000 per gig, then it means that you need 50 bookings a year. You also know that every time you send 500 cold emails, roughly speaking, you get a booking. So let's do the math. 500 cold emails times 50 bookings is 25,000 emails per year. 25,000 emails per year, roughly per month. 25,000 emails is 2,000 and change, 2,083 emails per month. So now you have your cold email strategy. Every month, send 2,000 cold emails. Roughly speaking, you're going to book 4 bookings at $2,000, and that's going to lead you to $100,000 per year. And I hope this math is making sense, because I'm not sharing this with you so that you can say, oh my gosh, that's so many emails, or for you to say, oh, that's so much to spend on ads. I'm sharing this with you because often it's within our own grasps to grow our own magic business just by knowing our numbers. And no matter how you generate leads, there's going to be a cost per lead, whether it's email sent, whether it's Google ads costs, whether it's time spent cold calling, whatever it is, there's a cost per lead that you generate. And this is a system that we use in the mastermind to better understand how much you need to be spending or how many emails you need to be sending to hit your goal. So there you have it. I hope you learned something behind the math of 100K magic business. Behind price, there's 2 ahas for you. One is the aha of maybe I'm charging too little. Number 2 is the aha of maybe the market that I'm in cannot handle the quantity that I need. And then in terms of lead acquisition, I hope there's 2 ahas for you as well. The first aha is, man, I need to know my numbers. I need to better understand what it costs me per booking to acquire a booking. And number 2 is to say, I have it within my grasp to reverse engineer what I need to do to hit $100,000 per year. I hope this was immensely helpful for you. I know it was a little bit of math. I know some of you are like, oh, math is hard, but this stuff is really helpful for figuring out how to grow your business. And if you need some more help growing your business, if you want help running Google ads and getting $100 form fills, or sending and writing cold emails to book $2,000 bookings, then you know where to find me. You can send me an email to magic@torontomagiccompany.com. And you can also find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Tinder. You know where I am. Anyways, thank you so much for being here. Next week, we have an incredible interview for you that I cannot wait to share. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for being here. Thanks for spreading the word. And I'll see you next Thursday. Ciao.